One quick thing before we get into the rankings. It's been announced since I made the quarterback rankings video yesterday that MHJ has cleared concussion protocol. I've moved Kyler Murray from 18th to 15th in the rankings because of this, lowered Michael Wilson, he's not any longer going to appear on this list, and moved MHJ up. You'll see where he is later, but just wanted to make that note. And so we begin the top 36 remaining wide receiver rankings. Remember, players that were on Thursday night or on bye are not going to be in these rankings. So if you're noticing that somebody isn't on here and they played on Thursday or on bye, that's going to be why. So we begin with wide receivers I think are probably low-end wide receiver threes this week. We have Jerry Jeudy, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Christian Watson. Jerry Jeudy is going to be the number one target, you would think. Moore will probably see an uptick in targets as well. I think the offense is, at least the success of the offense is going to come through David Njoku for the most part. But I do think it's reasonable to see a much higher target share for Jerry Jeudy. Deshaun Watson has been so bad, I still don't think that I want any part of this offense, honestly, in terms of the passing game, besides Njoku. So yeah, I think he's going to be a low-end wide receiver 3 this week, but we'll definitely have to see how it shakes out with Amari Cooper no longer there. Juju is playing San Fran. Before the bye this past week, he went off. This isn't the best matchup for him. I don't think anything remotely close to what we saw from Juju in week 5 is going to be the norm, but I do think that he's going to earn a lot more of a target share with Rashee Rice out. And so I do have him ranked here. And so we'll have to see how he performs this week. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I definitely don't want to overreact to one game of production. I have Christian Watson at 34. I do think that he's going to have a couple long receptions in this game. It's going to be really tough to project besides Jayden Reed who the best receivers are going to be on a week-to-week basis. They seem to rotate that. And so I think that in general, Jayden and Tucker Kraft are going to be the most reliable pass catchers in terms of week-to-week consistency. But I still do think that in a plus matchup against Houston, they don't have anybody that's going to be able to keep up with them. And so I do think he gets several long gains in this one. Now we have wide receivers I think are probably in the low-end to high-end wide receiver 3 range. We have Darnell Mooney, Tyler Lockett, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jordan Whittington, Josh Downs, Amari Cooper, and Tyreek Hill. Darnell Mooney has been very hit or miss. He's had a couple of really explosive games, but he's also had games where you really wouldn't even want him to be your flex. I think that this is a game where he gets enough passing volume to be a very solid option for us. I just project Drake London to have a much better game than he does, and I expect Kyle Pitts to be pretty good as well. We have Tyler Lockett playing against Atlanta. He was on the injury report. He's been declared good to go. Matched up against Atlanta, I think that he is the better option than JSN. I am a biased JSN fan, but regardless, I think that Tyler Lockett is the better play here. I suspect that AJ Terrell is mostly going to see DK Metcalf, but I still don't think AJ Terrell can guard Metcalf. I think it's a good day overall for the wide receivers, and I think it's going to be a high-scoring game overall between them and the Seahawks. Up next, we have Wan'Dale Robinson. He's playing Philly. Middle-of-the-road matchup. I don't think that the return of Malik Nabers really does anything to him. His role wasn't really affected. It was Slayton who saw the uptick in targets as he took on Nabers' role. I think Slayton goes down to fantasy irrelevance once again. I think Nabers is a top. I'll save that for later. He's very good, though. And I think Wan'Dale Robinson is still going to be a solid floor option for us. I don't have him projected for a touchdown, but I think he gets quite a few grabs in this one. We have Jordan Whittington. This is with Cooper Kupp not playing. He's been reported as being questionable. If he does play, then he's going to be a little bit higher up in these rankings, and I would probably remove Jordan Whittington altogether from the top 36 at least. But for now, this is where he's going to stay. I think that he's a fine option. I think that Colby Parkinson and Whittington are going to be the primary pass catchers in this one, but I think Kyren Williams is the one that has a really good game. We have Josh Downs against Miami. I think he still plays through his toe injury. With Anthony Richardson back, though, I'm much lower on Downs than I was going to be if it was Joe Flacco once again. And so I don't think that Downs is going to have a 20-point game or anything, but I still think he gets enough volume in this offense, especially with Michael Pittman playing through injury, that I think he's a very good option this week in terms of floor. Amari Cooper is playing against Tennessee. I don't like the matchup with L'Jarius Sneed, but going from Deshaun Watson to Josh Allen is about as big of an upgrade as you could possibly have at the NFL level. And so I want to be conservative here in his first week once he gets acclimated with the Bills offense, but it wouldn't shock me if he has a couple chunk gains in this one. And I think he's a very good rest of season outlook in terms of being a high-end wide receiver on a week-to-week basis, contingent on the matchup. And so in upcoming weeks, if the connection is what I think it's going to be, he's going to be much higher in these rankings. And finally, we have Tyreek Hill against Indianapolis. They have been terrible against outside wide receivers, and so that does bode well for him. However, he really hasn't been able to get anything going. He's only had one game of more than 10 points in PPR since Tua went down. And so I want to be a little bit conservative here despite the plus matchup, although it has been reported that Tua is supposed to come back very soon. And so Tyreek Hill should return to being an elite wide receiver one as soon as that happens. Now we have wide receivers that I think are probably right around low-end wide receiver twos, potentially high-end wide receiver threes, all the way to mid wide receiver twos. We have Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, JMO, MHJ, Xavier Worthy, Demario Douglas, Garrett Wilson, Deontay Johnson, and Deebo Samuel. Devontae Adams, it's really tough because he's brand new. He obviously has the connection with Rodgers throughout his career. I think this really helps Aaron Rodgers as well as Breece Hall because the offense should be scoring. I think it hurts Garrett Wilson. I love Garrett Wilson, so it kind of sucks. But it could also open up opportunities for both of them because it's going to be much more challenging for defenses now that they can't just double team Garrett Wilson, put their best corner and double team him. If you do that, Devontae Adams will absolutely roast you. And so it's going to be a thing where I think it raises both of their floors, but I think it caps their ceilings, if that makes any sense. I could be wrong, but that's what I think is going to happen. And so I do think that he scores a touchdown in this one. I just don't think he has a massive yardage day overall against Pittsburgh. I think the offensive line is going to have struggles. We have Brandon Ayuk playing against Kansas City. He had one awesome game, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. Before and after, he's really not done that much. I think the passing volume is going to help him in this one. I like Deebo Samuel just a little bit more, but I have them being fairly close in terms of their potential outcomes this week. But he's obviously, you're starting him no matter what. I would just temper expectations. I think the 49ers are probably going to spread the ball around quite a bit. Jordan Addison is playing Detroit. It's a plus matchup. The Lions lost Aiden Hutchinson, and so that really should help the offensive line out a ton. And so I think it is a very solid option this week. I just think Justin Jefferson gets the touchdown, and I think has a better game overall. But I think you're still happy with Addison's performance this week. T. Higgins is coming off, I believe it was a 7 for 77 game. But before that, he had a crazy game. And so I do think that he's obviously a must-start in this matchup against Cleveland. I just don't think they're going to need to pass the ball quite as much in this one because they're going to probably be winning substantially early. And so I do think that he still has a good game overall in terms of helping them build that lead. I just don't think that he's going to be receiving 10 targets in this one because I just don't think there's going to be any need for that to happen. Jameson Williams is playing against Minnesota this week. I do think he scores a touchdown and that helps him have a good week. But I do think in general, we do need to worry about Jameson Williams because since he had 9 and 11 targets in the first 2 weeks, he's been seeing maybe 4 to 5 a week since then. And so while he has been quite efficient in terms of scoring 50 plus yard touchdowns, that is a little bit unrealistic to expect him to be able to do every game on such a limited target share. And so I do think he's a great start this week, but from week to week, depending on the matchup, I do think we need to be a little bit cautious. And now we have MHJ against the Chargers. I moved Kyler up from 18 to 15 with the news of MHJ playing. I moved Michael Wilson down from the low 20s, I believe it was 29th or so, past 36, and not in these rankings. But with Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be matched up with Asante Samuel Jr., I suspect, a good amount of the time. It's not a very good matchup. The Cardinals' offensive line, I think, is going to have troubles standing up against the pass rush of the Chargers. And so I think it's not the best day overall from anyone in this offense altogether, but I still think he's going to be fed a good amount. It's quite interesting. He has, I believe, I forget what the stat is specifically, but he has right around the most targets or fantasy points in the first quarter of games of anybody this year. But then after that, he's an afterthought. I think that is quite strange. You would think that MHJ would be involved throughout the entirety of the game always, but that has not been the case. And so I think better days are ahead for him. And I really hope that they have a coaching change next year. But You're still starting him regardless. Xavier Worthy, I have scoring 15.1 this week. He almost had 2 touchdowns last week if it wasn't for poor blocking on a rush attempt, and then if Mahomes hadn't either underthrown or overthrown slightly on what was a fade route, he would have had a really good game. And so I do think that he gets a touchdown in this one. I just don't think the overall receptions are going to be there for him. I think that Travis Kelce is going to be the primary beneficiary in that regard, but still a great start this week with a ton of upside. We have Demario Douglas playing Jacksonville. It's a very good matchup. He looked really good with Drake May last week. He's been a sneaky play the past couple of weeks, and I think he has another good game here again. Garrett Wilson, I would have him a lot higher, but with the addition of Devontae Adams, I do think that lowers his ceiling. I do think it helps his floor, though. Uh, Teams are not going to be able to double team him like they have been previously. And so I think he's going to have more receptions than Adams in this one, but I have Adams scoring the touchdown. Regardless, though, you're starting Garrett Wilson every single week, no matter what. Deontay Johnson, I suspect he plays. It's a great matchup against Washington. I think he's the clear wide receiver one there. Xavier Legette has been a little bit inconsistent in terms of his target share the past 2 weeks. I was expecting much better things after his blow-up game 3 weeks ago. But for now, you're starting Deontay Johnson with confidence. He has a ton of upside, and it's a very good matchup. Debo, I am a little bit higher than Ayuk on, but not by that much, really. I think that he gets a couple of designed runs, which is going to help his total output. He definitely has the possibility of having a blow-up game here. I do suspect, though, that the 49ers are going to ration out their target share between him, Ayuk, and Kittle pretty evenly. But still a fantastic start with a ton of upside. Really quickly, if you like what you're hearing and seeing so far, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. Wide receivers that I think are probably high-end wide receiver 2s to low-end wide receiver 1s are Brian Thomas Jr., Tank Dell, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, and Jaden Reed. Brian Thomas Jr. is playing against New England. He should have had around a 12 to 14 point game last week if he didn't drop a touchdown. And so I think that he's an every week must start. I don't think he sees shadow coverage from Christian Gonzalez in this one. And so I do think that helps him out. He's one of the best downfield threats in the NFL already. He has an insane ADOT. And so I think he's a very good, strong start this week. Tank Dell is playing Green Bay. In the absence of Nico Collins, he immediately went for an 18-point game in full PPR. I think he's a strong start again. I don't have him scoring a touchdown, but I think he gets a ton of yardage in this one and a few catches himself. Devontae Smith draws the Giants this week. I think he has a fantastic game. I do think he scores a touchdown in this one. And I really love the entire Eagles offense with the exception of Dallas Goedert this week. DK Metcalf is playing against Atlanta. I do think he draws the coverage of AJ Terrell, but I think he's just too physically dominant and explosive for Terrell to cover. And so I think he's a very strong start in what should be a pretty high scoring game overall. Jaden Reed is playing Houston. I think that he avoids the coverage of Derek Stingley a reasonable amount because he's not really an X wide receiver. They have him playing in the slot and at flanker quite often. And so with him not being on the line of scrimmage, I think that really helps him be the best bet this week. I do think that Romeo Doubs is going to be the one that has the worst week, or possibly Dontavian Wicks. It's contingent on who faces Derek Stingley more. And so I do think that helps boost the value of Reed this week. Wide receivers that I have as top 10 options, but I don't think are real threats to be the wide receiver 1 overall this week, are Drake London, Stephon Diggs, and Terry McLaurin. Drake London is playing against Seattle this week. I think that he has a fantastic game. I think he scores a touchdown. And it's so cool to see him in a non-Arthur Smith offense with competent quarterback play. It's been very fun to see, and I think he continues the stretch that he's been having. I just don't think he has the game that he had when they had 500 total yards on through the air, but still very, very good start. Stephon Diggs against Green Bay. I do think he sees some Jair Alexander in this game, but being the number 1 in this offense with CJ Stroud throwing you the ball with Bobby Slowick as your OC is going to lead to a lot of fantasy success. We've seen that with Nico Collins last year and this year. And so I think Stephon Diggs has a fantastic game and is a very strong start. At 8, I have Terry McLaurin facing off against the Panthers this week. It's just about the best matchup besides maybe Jacksonville that you could possibly draw. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 every single week here, and I think he has a very, very good game with the touchdown. Wide receivers that I have as top 7 options and that I think are serious candidates to be the wide receiver 1 this week are Malik Nabers, Zay Flowers, Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and A.J. Brown. Malik Nabers is playing Philadelphia this week. He is matchup proof. He is wide receiver 1. I really don't think that there's a matchup that he could draw that would lead me to rank him outside of the top 10. I mean, if Daniel Jones was injured and it was a tough matchup, maybe, but he seems to be one of those wide receivers that is just too good to where it does not matter who's throwing him the ball or what matchup he's in. And so I think he's a very safe 20 points this week and a fantastic start with elite wide receiver 1 upside. Zay Flowers faces off against Tampa Bay this week. It's a plus matchup. I expect there to be heavy amounts of offense on both sides of the ball in this game. I think that he has a much stronger start than any of the Ravens tight ends this week. And so I do think for that reason that he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver. I do have him scoring a touchdown. And yeah, he is a very strong start. Then we have Jamar Chase against Cleveland. I think that he's going to absolutely roast Cleveland's defense this week. I don't think he's going to be needed too much in the second half of this game, but I think he's going to do so much damage along with T. Higgins in the first half that I think they're very good starts regardless. Chris Godwin, I do think that Mike Evans misses this game, and so I give him a little bit of a boost. It wouldn't shock me if he has more points than this. I do think that does hurt him, though, in the sense of it's going to make it easier for Baltimore to give him more defensive attention. But with Baltimore's inability to stop wide receivers in recent weeks, he's an insanely strong start, and he absolutely could be the wide receiver 1, especially due to the awesome volume he's seeing. Justin Jefferson is playing Detroit this week. He is a must-start with absolute wide receiver 1 overall potential this week. They're going to have more time to throw without Aiden Hutchinson playing. And with Detroit being full strength on offense, I think that also makes it a necessity that they continue to throw throughout the entirety of this game. And so, as per usual, I'm high on Justin Jefferson, and I really think he's a serious threat to be wide receiver 1 overall. There's just 2 wide receivers that I think are probably, in my opinion, a little bit better bets. Amon-Ra St. Brown is facing off against Minnesota this week. It is one of the better matchups in the NFL. Garrett Wilson recently had the 3rd most targets in a game against Minnesota, and it was because they just cannot guard wide receivers. And so I do think that's how Detroit chooses to attack Minnesota. And I think overall it's going to be a very high-scoring game, and I think he gets tons of volume in this one. And then at number 1, we have A.J. Brown facing off against the Giants. I think he's going to tear up the Giants. There is nobody on that defense physical enough to cover him. And with this offense back in full swing, I think there's going to be a lot of point scoring. And I think that he, as well as Devontae Smith, both get receiving touchdowns this week. And so to recap, wide receivers that I think are probably low-end wide receiver 3s this week are Jerry Jeudy, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Christian Watson. Wide receivers that I think could probably be anywhere from low-end wide receiver 3s to potentially mid to high-end wide receiver 2s are Darnell Mooney, Tyler Lockett, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jordan Whittington, Josh Downs, Amari Cooper, and Tyreek Hill. Wide receivers that I think could potentially be low-end wide receiver 2s to even mid wide receiver 2s are Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, JMO, MHJ, Xavier Worthy, Demario Douglas, Garrett Wilson, Deontay Johnson, and Deebo Samuel. Wide receivers that I think are probably high-end wide receiver 2s to low-end wide receiver 1s this week are BTJ, Tank Dell, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, and Jaden Reed. Wide receivers that I think are safe top 10 options, but I don't think are going to be the wide receiver 1 overall this week are Drake London, Stephon Diggs, and Terry McLaurin. And then wide receivers that I think are serious candidates to be the wide receiver 1 overall this week are Malik Nabers, Zay Flowers, Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin, Justin Jefferson, ASRB, and A.J. Brown. All right, so who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Is there somebody from these rankings that you think I should have projected a little bit higher? Let me know below in the comment section. And remember that Thursday night game players or people on bye are not going to be included in these rankings. So if you see somebody that should be there that is in that specific circumstance, that's the reason why they're not included. I think the most interesting thing to note this week, 2 things really, will first of all be the usage of Amari Cooper in terms of his specific role in this offense. I think that with them adding Cooper, they could potentially stop having to put Keon Coleman there. But if they still choose to put Keon Coleman there, I think Amari Cooper's fine regardless. But that one will be interesting because depending on where they utilize Cooper more, that could potentially really help Keon Coleman. And then another thing will be where exactly Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson rank in terms of target share. Are they both going to receive 8 to 10 targets? Is one of them going to suffer on a week-to-week basis? That one will be quite interesting. But what do you think is the most interesting thing for us to look out for in week 7? Let me know below in the comment section. With that being said, if you like what you've seen and heard in this video, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.